Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to DDD Digital District Day 22-23. And we're excited that you've decided to join us on our session, designing, using Goalbook to design instructional toolkit. As you know, we have purchased over 100 licenses. I believe, Caitlin, 100, 120 or so licenses, 125 licenses for use in our for our teachers. And we want you guys to really optimize the use of Goalbook. It's not just using it to propose IEP goals during annual or triennial IEPs. It's more than that. It's really about, hey, if my students have this goal, what instructional um, what instruction or resources can I use for my student to hit that goal, right? And even sharing it with your general education co-teachers, that resource, because they don't have access to the Goalbook license. But in any case, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now, right, Caitlin? Every year. And I see some of you actually has been joining us. You were there with us last year. So thank you again for coming for a refresher. Um, Please use this bit.ly to sign in for attending this PD, as well as in the chat. I got several email from you yesterday about how can I use my Prop G for attending the DDD. And so if you can just click on that link about, it will bring you to the resources. If not, if it doesn't directly bring you there, there's a button there that says resources. And then I would like to introduce to you our partners from Goalbook. We have Caitlin and Sohom. Forgive me if I said it wrong. They're both our partners. They are success managers that will show us how to maximize or optimize our use of Goalbook. Caitlin and Soham?
Alrighty, well, we're excited to be here with all of you. Welcome back to the beginning of 22-23 school year. I'll keep this bit.ly up for just a few more seconds if anyone needs it. I saw a couple people just joined. If you need it to sign in for the day, you can use that bit.ly link to sign in for Digital District Day. All right. We will certainly introduce ourselves, but while we're on the topic of kind of some housekeeping agendas, I did want to name a couple of other resources that may be helpful for our time today. And so number one, we will be engaging with a few resources today. If you prefer to access them electronically, there's a tiny URL right over here that you can use to access those resources electronically. And so feel free to save that or to type that into your browser. You'll have access to a shareable Google Drive that you'll be able to then look at all of the handouts and kind of documents that we'll be engaging with today. Secondly, we're going to be spending a good amount of time in Goalbook Toolkit. Our homepage is goalbookapp.com, and we'll certainly reference that back later on during our session. You'll have a lot of work time in the tool, but for now, if you just want to make a note, that goalbookapp.com will be the homepage for Goalbook. And then lastly, if you have a paper and pencil next to you, we have a few reflections built into our time today, a few moments where you may be able to jot down some key learnings. And so we always find that having something to write with and a piece of paper next to you could be helpful. If you're fully electronic, maybe opening up another Google Doc or a Word document would also suffice. All right. Like I said, we're super excited to be here with you today. Our focus today is going to be on designing instruction with Goalbook Toolkit. My name is Soham Bhatt, and before joining the Goalbook team, I was actually an educator in San Francisco Public Schools. I taught at Wallenberg High School and joined the Goalbook team now, and so I still stay connected to teaching and learning, but it's nice to be back in the district. It's nice to be back with you all. I'm also joined by my colleague, Caitlin, who's going to be helping out on chat support, and I'll give Caitlin a few moments to introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Soham. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. My name's Caitlin, and like Soham, I was also a classroom teacher prior to joining the Goalbook team, and I'm actually representing the elementary side. So I know we have a diverse group of educators here. Soham and I are just two of many. Everyone on our team came from the K-12 space prior to landing on this team. So happy to be back for another year, and happy to be kicking off the 22-23 school year with you guys. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. And like I mentioned before, Caitlin's going to be on chat support, so don't hesitate to send questions through the chat. If you have them coming up through the demo or for our time today, Caitlin will answer those as quickly as she can. All right. I'd also like to tell you a little bit more about Goalbook. And so Caitlin and I are just two of many former educators that work at Goalbook. A lot of the resources, not a lot, all of the resources, the strategies, the goals, the tips that you'll see in Goalbook Toolkit today were created and compiled by our team of content experts. And that team sits across the country. They have a holistic view of what goes on in classrooms around the country. And they partner with research-based organizations such as CAST to make sure that the resources we put on our website are evidence-based and of quality. The best part about our work is this season. We get to partner with educators like yourself. We partner with over 700 districts across 47 states, which allows us to work with educators like yourselves. And so Caitlin and I are on our implementation team. We really love this time of year where we get to meet educators like yourself. Research about Goalbook has been known to show a couple things, namely that it helps promote the through line between present level statements, goals, and strategies that support our students in the classroom, but also encouraging collaboration between special educators and general educators, which we know also helps our kids be successful. Today, we want to focus on 3 objectives. First, we'll start by looking into student data and seeing how we can use that data to draft meaningful present level statements for our students. Next, we'll look at how we can design standards-based instruction by using our standard aligned learning goals, and then use Goalbook Toolkit to adapt those goals for our students. And lastly, we want to use Goalbook Toolkit to find hundreds of research-based UDL aligned strategies that help remove learning barriers for our students in the classroom. As we engage in our time today, I just want to go over a few norms that will help us and ground us in our session. So number 1, be present. We want everyone to be fully engaged for the session, and we know it's hard when you're at home or when you're logging in virtually to fully focus, but please try to avoid multitasking as much as possible. Secondly, we're going to be engaging with a few different questions and a few different reflections. We'll all get a lot more out of our time today if we are active participants, if we participate with one another and use each other for our collaborative learning. Thirdly, I want to say that we'll assume best intentions. And then lastly, we want to trust the process. So you may see some content today that doesn't perfectly match your grade level or your area of expertise. And I want to name that that's okay. We've designed time in our tool so that you can apply these models to your own practice. Before I push ahead, are there any norms that you would want to change or norms that you would want to add? You can feel free to send those through the chat. Give you a moment just to send that in. If you have anything top of mind, feel free to send that through. And the other thing I would like to do while you may be chatting in some suggestions here is to also learn who we have in the room. And so if you could just introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your grade level, and your role, that would be fantastic, just so Caitlin and I get a sense of who's in the room, and if we need to tailor anything specifically, then we can do so during our time today. So I'll give you a moment to do that as well.
I'm going to jump in with just a little bit of housekeeping. When you chat in, make sure that you've selected the bubble that says everyone, And I'm going to just double check and make sure that you have the ability to do that. A lot of these are coming in as direct messages. So I'm just going to say a quick hi to Bob, Maya, Jen, Monique, and Evan. Thank you for introducing yourselves. And I'll work on the chat to make sure we're able to, everybody can see. Thank you so much.
Got it. I got a direct message from Sam. So hi, Sam. Sam saying that they don't have access to chat everyone. So maybe that's something that we can work on throughout the session. But those of you that chatted yourselves in, hello. And we're excited to be here today. Now, we want to start our session today with an analogy. If you're like me, I distinctly remember moments when I was younger taking road trips with my family. And that road trip for us used to start from New Jersey, where I grew up, and we would drive all the way to Chicago. Now, that road trip was around 14 or 15 hours. And at that time, we used a map, like a paper copy of a map, to help find our route. If you've experienced road trips like me, you've also gotten lost on those road trips. And we can all agree that having a GPS helps us define our journey a little bit more clearly. It also supports us in being efficient with our time. We learn which highways to avoid. Maybe we avoid tolls or we avoid construction. Perhaps it helps us plan our stops a little bit better. And so today, I want us to think about an IEP as an instructional journey, which will help us understand the landscape of where we're starting from, strategically plan grade level goals for our students, and support students' varied journeys towards that particular destination. To really drive the through line for this analogy, the IEP answers these three basic questions similar to a road trip would. So where are we starting from? We enter that information into a GPS. In the context of an IEP, we think about it as a present level statement. What do we know about our student and where are we starting from? Secondly, we ask, where are we going? In a GPS, we enter in our destination. For our students and for our IEPs, we think about that as the standard aligned goals that we may be looking for or developing for our students. And then lastly, how will we get there? The GPS gives us a nicely defined route. And in the context of an IEP, we think about what support strategies are we going to include, or what modifications are we going to make to a particular goal so that our students can access grade level instruction. For our time today, we're going to be using a student profile. And the profile that we're going to engage with today is that of Rachel. Rachel's in 5th grade. And there's a quote that I have up about Rachel saying she wants to be a doctor when she's older. Now, this quote gives us a little glimpse into who Rachel is, but there's a lot more to know about Rachel, both academically and personally. And so in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to read her story and consider the following guiding questions. And so I'll put these questions up on the screen. I'll give you a moment to look them over. And as you read, think about what you learn about Rachel, specifically her experiences in math and English class, and also take note of what resonates or surprises you, and just general what key takeaways you have. So this may be a good time to have a pen and paper handy, or if you are opening up a new Google Doc on your laptop, a good place for you to jot down some thoughts, all right? We'll give you about, let's say, 4 to 5 minutes to read Rachel's story and think about some of these questions. I'm going to set a timer and we'll come back around 1:50, and I'll give you about a 2-minute heads up before the time is done. All right, we may begin now. I think Caitlin has just chatted Rachel's story in the chat, so feel free to access it through there. All right, 1:50, we'll come back. Just have about 90 seconds left. And so keep in mind you're reading Rachel's story and thinking about the 4 guiding questions that are on the screen. We'll come back and engage in a brief conversation through the chat. Alrighty, we are at 1:50 and I want to honor that time. So I'll ask you to bring your attention back to the screen. If you didn't get through all of Rachel's story, that's totally fine. But at this point, through the chat, pick one of these questions to answer and maybe tell me a little bit about what you learned about Rachel from her story, whether that relates to her math and English class or whether about her personally, or just any key takeaways or things that resonated with you. Feel free to answer one of these questions in the chat. We really want to get to know Rachel as we think about designing instruction using Goalbook Toolkit. And so this story gives us a little sneak peek into who she is.
And we should be good to go on chat access now. Sorry about that early snafu. I'll share an observation. One thing that jumped out at me from Rachel's story was that her math teacher had them spend quite a bit of time as 5th graders on work that is aligned to 4th grade standards. So surprisingly, Rachel is good at math, but actually doesn't enjoy her math class all that much. And I'll defer to some others that come up in the chat here.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Caitlin. I see Tiffany saying that Rachel's energized when she's supported. Even if she's unsure how to do something, she's willing to try with enough scaffolding, opportunity, and encouragement. That's a great observation. Jenny's mentioning that Rachel's excited to learn, can work independently. We have some call outs about the English teacher saying that the English teacher was better prepared to support students, may need a little bit more scaffolding to continue with the in-class activity. I hear that as well. All right, keep those observations about Rachel coming, right? We definitely want to make sure that we have a good understanding of who she is as we think about designing instruction for her using Goalbook Toolkit. Now, something that popped up to me was Rachel's experience in her math class. I'll be the first one to admit that Rachel's experience in math reminds me at times of my own classroom. I specifically remember weeks at a time where students were not working on grade level assignments. And when I think about that now, I wonder why I thought that was necessary. And maybe there is a justification somewhere at some point in time. But I also wonder what the implications of that were. Was I really setting up my students for success? And could I have done it in a slightly different way? Well, in 2018, a nationwide study found that Rachel's experience in her math class and the experience that I just shared about my own classroom is not unique. The study focused on observing lessons, reviewing assignments, looking at student work samples, and collecting surveys. And they found that out of 180 core classroom hours in each core subject, 133 of those hours were spent on assignments that were not grade appropriate. That leaves only 47 hours out of the 180 that were spent on assignments that were grade appropriate. And for those of you that are doing the quick mental math, that's 74% of students' classroom time that was spent on tasks that were not grade appropriate. The study goes a little bit further and explored what that looked like for classrooms where students were made up of students of color versus mostly white. And success rates on grade appropriate assignments were actually similar across those classrooms. However, 4 out of 10 classrooms with majority students of color never even received a single grade level assignment. In summary, students of color, those from low-income families, English language learners, and students with mild to moderate disabilities have even less access to these resources than their peers. Now, meanwhile, the National Center for Learning Disabilities released this data, comparing the reading scores of students without disabilities, students with any type of disability, and students with a specific learning disability. And we know that students with specific learning disabilities have average to above average intelligence. But as shown by the third row in each data set, their reading proficiency scores are way below those of their peers without disabilities. All I think about when I see this information is access to grade level instruction. What if instead of 74% of class time being spent on tasks that were not grade level appropriate, that number was lower? What would that mean for proficiency and achievement for all of our students? But data suggests that when given access to grade level tasks, students on these tasks or success on these tasks is similar between all students. As Richard Elmore summarizes, it turns out that kids can do pretty much anything you ask them to do with the right kind of instructional practice. It's downright scary. I want to encourage us to focus on how we'll approach our work today and every day with the belief that all students are capable of achieving grade level expectations with the right kind of instructional practice. As we move through our time today, keep this front and center. How do we set and hold rigorous expectations for all learners so that their full potential can be recognized? That starts in our practice by having the best GPS navigation system to guide us. And for us, in the context of an IEP, it starts with a data-driven, standards-based IEP system. Now, we talked a little bit about Rachel's experience in math class, but I also want to recognize Rachel's English teacher. She took time to get to know Rachel personally, held her to those high expectations, and created a meaningful relationship with Rachel that made her feel belonged and that she could achieve her lifelong goal of becoming a doctor. That's what makes teaching so special. And so now I'd like for you to take some time to reflect on your own students, their dreams, and what we will do to ensure that we are that same educator for our students. On a piece of paper, a Google Doc, or a Word document, let's go ahead and jot down our responses to the 2 questions listed here. Identify a student, and what commitment are you making today to support your student to be successful? I'll give you about 2 minutes just to reflect on this on your own, and then we'll come back and push forward. All right? Alrighty, and I'm going to go ahead and call your attention back to the slide. Hopefully at this point you've thought of a student and what commitment you're making to that student so that they can be successful. At this point, we're going to jump in. The foundation of our IEP is the present level statement, and Goalbook helps us make a present level statement that is data driven. In the context of our analogy, present level statement helps us answer the question, where are we starting from? What do we know about our student? What do we know to be true and valid about our students' experiences? At Goalbook, we've identified 3 components of a present level statement, and best practice says that we should include the following components: data, story, and objective statements. And we'll explore each one of these elements of a present level statement. Let's focus on reading for Rachel. There's many ways that we can collect data for our students. We have last year's IEP, we have end of year tests, we have grades, we have district assessments, we have iReady, maybe running records. The list seems endless. What are some other pieces of data that you have available to your student that you could theoretically include in a present level statement? Feel free to just chime in through the chat. What are some other data points that you collect as a part of your practice that would be helpful in crafting a present level statement? And thanks, Caitlin, for always popping the questions in the chat. Much appreciated. See, writing samples and interviewing the students, great. Those are fantastic data points. In-class independent work, F&P, RI scores, great. And so we have access to a lot of data points that we could be including in our present level statement. Now, there may be a time where we don't have access to data points. Suppose Rachel is a new student, and that's where Goalbook Toolkit really comes into play. The tool includes a research-based assessment if you're starting from scratch. And so when you log in to Goalbook Toolkit, this is our homepage. You can click on the present levels wizard, enter in some student identifying information, and then right away you are brought to a draft present level statement that has an embedded assessment that you can use to help establish baseline levels. Now, we're not saying this is the only data point that you can use. We just listed off a whole bunch, and us including the assessment is meant to be additive to the other data points that you're collecting as a part of your practice. The second piece of a present level statement that we want to talk about is the story. We know that Rachel, in our case, is a lot more than just her data. She's a student, she's a reader, she wants to be a doctor. And this portion allows us to build on that narrative so anyone picking up Rachel's IEP on the first day can run with it and design effective instruction. When we think about the story, we can think about adding in student strengths, any strategies or accommodations that help the student, and a description of how the current skills or content is being taught so that we have more information when we look to design instruction. And so, for example, I may find that Rachel is supported in her ability to read and comprehend text if I use strategies such as sentence starters, multiple choice tests, or anchor charts. And if so, I want to include all this information into my present level statement. Additionally, maybe I learn more about Rachel, right? Rachel's new to my classroom. How could I learn more about her to build on that narrative? Once again, Goalbook Toolkit comes in handy. Again, you'll see our homepage. And in order to learn more about Rachel, perhaps you look at some of our UDL aligned strategies that we have to offer. Upon clicking Browse Strategies, you then have access to hundreds of evidence-based strategies that you can look through. And let's say in particular, you find vision boarding to be helpful. Now, a vision board allows Rachel to display her own strengths, her own aspirations and goals, and have them up in the classroom so you can continuously come back to them and have Rachel monitor her own progress against her own goals as she moves throughout the year. Any information from a vision board activity could certainly be included as the story component of our present levels statement. The last thing we can include is observational data. And so we know that Rachel often signs up for time at the library. When she does, she gravitates towards books about medicine and human anatomy. We know this to be factually true. We observe this in our classroom, we see it happen, and I want to be careful to note that this is not an opinion, right? We very much see this happening in our classroom, and hence we say that it's an objective or observational data point. And so these three elements, data, story, and objective statements, go a long way in helping us come up with a really meaningful present level statement. We've learned a little bit about Rachel through this story, but I want to share some additional information about her as we look to jump into Goalbook Toolkit. And so you'll see Rachel's profile on the screen. I want you to meet Rachel. And we're going to spend some time designing instruction for Rachel, but I want to cover some strengths and needs that I see to help us ground ourselves when we move through Goalbook Toolkit. The first thing I see is Rachel reads fluently at grade level. I see that she's very social, she has strong friendships, the library is her happy place. All of this would be categorized as a strength. When I look at her needs, I see that she comprehends text at a 3rd grade level. She qualifies for services because of a specific learning disability. Specifically, the primary area of impact seems to be in cognitive conceptualization. I also see that she gets frustrated and she has difficulty organizing her thinking. And so based off of this, we want to jump into Goalbook Toolkit and start designing instruction. I'm going to show you how to access Goalbook Toolkit for now. We promise you that you'll have work time at the end. And so for now, you can just watch what I'm doing, and then we'll give you your username and password so that you can also log in and start to play around with the tool and access some of the resources. In order to access Goalbook Toolkit, you go to goalbookapp.com in your URL browser, and you'll hit sign in on the right side of the page. Upon entering your username and password, you'll be taken to our Goalbook Toolkit homepage. And while we have a bunch of resources here, right, I want to walk through the structure of the homepage first very quickly, just so you have an overview of what that looks like. This is a quick way to come to the homepage. You have a drop-down menu for all of our instructional resources, and then a quick way to access your toolkit library. At the top, you'll see a What's New section, which has a list of upcoming webinars and any new tips or strategy pages that we've just uploaded. Below that, you'll see our Explore Instructional Resources section, which has 5 options. The Present Levels wizard, which we'll go into momentarily for Rachel, allows you to craft data-driven present level statements and access downloadable assessments. These 2 options in blue allow you to search for standard aligned instructional content for students. And then the 2 purple options allow you to look for UDL aligned strategies to further support students in achieving their goals. Down at the bottom, you'll see your saved content in the form of your library and any favorites that you have, and the ability to browse by subject area. We offer content in our core subjects of reading, writing, math. We also offer content in behavior and SEL, pre-K, English language learners. For autism, you can think about this as resources for social interaction, speech and language, which are aligned to the speaking and listening standards, transition for any students that may be changing schools or graduating high school. The goals in this area are more around like greeting an unfamiliar adult or writing a resume. All academic and life skills, and these are for our students that take alternate assessments. For occupational therapy, success skills, you can think about that as resources for executive functioning, deaf, hard of hearing, adaptive PE, blind visual impairment, birth to 3 years, and dyslexia. So there's a whole host of domains in which we offer instructional goals in. In the chat, I'd just love for you to send in what's one area that you're interested in exploring a little bit more when we have some work time. So what's one area that feels relevant to you and that you're interested in exploring when you have some work time? Just go ahead and chat that in right now. As you do that, I'm going to scroll to the top and dive into our present levels wizard to start crafting a statement with Rachel's profile in mind. And so when I click on the wizard, I'm prompted for some student information. I'll enter in Rachel's name, select the grade level that she's enrolled in, but keep in mind you can select pre-K all the way to grade 12. Rachel's enrolled in 5th grade, so I'll select that. And now you can select areas that you wish to report on for strengths and needs. For Rachel, maybe I select reading. I could select social and emotional learning, maybe communication. But for the purposes of time and this demo, I'm just going to stick to reading. I'll hit develop present levels. Now I'm taken to a section where I can indicate specific areas within reading to indicate areas of strength and need. And once again, you can select as many areas as you wish to report on and which the data indicate. For the purposes of Rachel, I'm just going to stick to fluency and comprehension. I'll click Add for Fluency, and you'll notice that a draft statement has been started for me. I also have access to a downloadable assessment, which I can open with or download with a PDF or open with Google Drive and administer that to Rachel to establish baseline levels. In this case, in addition to the assessment, we've also given you an oral reading fluency scale. Let's say I download this assessment and I give it to Rachel, and sure enough, she's able to read at grade level. She performs proficiently. That's great. It's a strength of hers, and we should include strengths in our present level statement. I can click into the box, and now I can begin editing any portion of this statement. While you can edit any portion, we strongly recommend that you at least edit the portions that are in parentheses, because you want to individualize that for your student. And so let's say over here that we realize that Rachel is reading at 120 words correct per minute. I can change the date in which I gave the assessment to her. And now the quantitative portion of Rachel's present level statement, the part that maps to our data piece of the checklist, is complete. Down below, you'll see some guiding questions that you can answer. We said there's also a story component of our present levels checklist, and we know that Rachel is a lot more than her data. These questions hint at a couple of other things you can add about Rachel to help build context in her present level statement. Again, I can answer some questions. And so here I'll say Rachel prefers to read text about medicine and human anatomy. She often signs up for time at the library. If I don't answer a particular question, I'm going to highlight it and delete it so it doesn't copy over into my final IEP document. And now I'll hit done. The statement temporarily saves. As I scroll down, you'll see the standards that the assessment are aligned to, as well as those assessment resources pop back up right over here. Let's say I also want to report on comprehension. I'm going to go ahead and hit add. And you'll see another draft statement has been started for me. I also have access to another downloadable assessment. In this case, maybe I choose to open it up with Google Drive. I have a passage, and then a pre-assessment with questions that are aligned to different levels of DOK. I'll just scroll through so you can see that. You can use this so that there is a evidence-based data point for Rachel's present levels, in addition to any other data points that you may be collecting as a part of your practice. Let's say that I print out this assessment for Rachel and she does not perform proficiently. I can then drill back using these radio buttons and find a grade level aligned assessment that Rachel can perform proficiently on. So now I'm aligned to 3rd grade. The embedded assessment naturally realigns to 3rd grade. I can print it out and give it to Rachel. Let's say Rachel performs proficiently on this assessment. I can begin editing this statement now. You'll see the background turns yellow. And let's say we are measuring Lexile score as a part of our practice. We are collecting that information, but we're not collecting FNP, we're not collecting DRA. Just go ahead and delete that. And I can continue to make further edits as I think are necessary. Once again, you'll see those guiding questions pop up right here. For the purposes of time, I'm just not going to answer them, but you can to provide that additional context, and then I'll hit done. As you scroll down, you'll see the last section of the present levels wizard, and that is our impacted disability statement. This statement describes Rachel's disability, how it impacts her, and how it impacts access to subject-specific tasks and information. We know in Rachel's case that she qualifies for services because of a specific learning disability, and so I'm going to go ahead and hit add, and you'll see a draft statement has been started for me. I can indicate the primary area of impact for Rachel, which was in cognitive conceptualization. If I want to indicate more than one, I can just simply click right here, and then I'll be able to select multiple. And once again, a draft statement has been started for me. I see this portion is in parentheses, and so I'm definitely going to edit this portion and say that Rachel struggles to recall key details from a text. I'll hit done so that the statement temporarily saves. Keep in mind that you have additional options that you can select as well. If I scroll down, I'll hit generate draft present levels, and now the wizard has compiled everything that I've indicated so far. I see some student identifying information at the top. I'll see an area of strength and fluency. We reported that Rachel was at grade level. I'll see an area of need and comprehension because Rachel is below grade level there. And then finally, my impacted disability statement. At this point, I have a couple options. I can go back to edit this present level statement. I can copy this statement and input it into a third-party IEP service that I'm using, so SACE, or I can save it to my Toolkit library. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll create a folder for Rachel, call it Rachel G. And now this present level statement is saved to Rachel's folder in Goalbook Toolkit for me to come back to. We know the alignment between present level statements, standard aligned learning goals, and strategies is critical in supporting our students in the classroom. And so to the right, you'll see some hyperlinks for instructional content that you can look through as it pertains to Rachel in the area of need of comprehension, and some related UDL aligned strategies that you can also browse through to help support Rachel in the classroom. I'm going to go back to our homepage, just quickly summarize what we did. On the homepage, we've clicked on Present Levels Wizard, and we've used the wizard to create a data-driven present level statement. At this point, we would love to give you some work time to go into the tool and explore the present level statement, either with Rachel's profile in mind or a student that you reflected on earlier. So we're going to give you 10 minutes, and in those 10 minutes, you'll get the opportunity to log into Goalbook. Remember to log in. You'll use goalbookapp.com in your URL browser. You'll hit the orange sign in button on the top right. Use your district email address, and your password is SFU123. If you have trouble logging in, let us know, and we'll be able to give you a temporary account for today. And then you may be able to follow up with your leadership team in the future to get access. All right. Some ideas that you can do when you log in are to explore the present levels wizard and be sure that you save it to your library so you can start building a profile of your student in Goalbook Toolkit. All right. I'll put the login credentials back on. I'll set a timer for about 10 minutes and then we'll come back. I'm getting some private chat messages about setting up temporary accounts. I believe Caitlin has linked a Google spreadsheet in the chat. So if you're having trouble login, just scroll up in the chat a little bit. You'll see a link to a Google spreadsheet, and that'll have all the information that you need to access a temporary account for today. All right, thanks, Caitlin. Just a quick heads up, we'll come back in about 3 minutes. I know it never feels like enough time. If you didn't get to finish this particular portion of exploring Goalbook Toolkit, not to worry, we have additional work time built in later on in the session, but just in the interest of time, we'll regroup in about 3 minutes. Alrighty, and I want to call everyone back. So at this point, if you're still exploring, bring your attention back to the Zoom screen. I know it never feels like enough time, but like I said earlier, we have additional work time built in, and we promise that we'll let you get back into the tool. I'm just curious, as you explored the tool and tried developing a present level statement, what's one new learning or key takeaway that you have about writing a data-driven present level statement, whether that's through our conversation that we had earlier about what makes up a present level statement with our checklist of data, story, and objective statements, or through your exploration of Goalbook Toolkit. Just send that through the chat. What's one new learning or aha that you've had now that you've had a chance to use Goalbook Toolkit to help you develop a data-driven present level statement? Alrighty, and keep those responses coming. Caitlin is going to field those in the chat. All right. In the interest of time, we're going to keep moving forward. And so once we've developed a present level statement, the second step in our instructional journey comes to designing instruction. Now, when we think about designing instruction, we think about answering two questions similar to our road trip. And those two questions are, where are we going? Or what are the standard aligned goals that our students are going to be working towards? And how will we get there? What are the modifications, support strategies that we're going to include to make sure that our students are successful? Now, that question alone, how do I design accessible instruction at grade level for all students, is extremely complicated. It's really hard. And we hope that using Goalbook Toolkit provides you with a resource in making that a little bit more accessible. I want to show you how Goalbook Toolkit thinks about designing instruction at grade level for all students, so you understand some of what you're seeing when you look at our toolkit resources. All of Goalbook Toolkit's goals are standards aligned. And something that you'll notice is that in addition to citing the standard that a goal is aligned to, we also give you something called a core purpose. To find the core purpose, it's helpful to think about how each Common Core standard is very complex and has lots of layers, similar to many layers like a jawbreaker. If we strip away the layers and get to the most important part of that standard, the essential element, we call that the core purpose. And that core purpose becomes the firm goal that we use for all of our students. And so, how do we come up with the core purpose? Well, I want to name that we don't water down the standard. We don't ignore half of it, right? We really try to distill the standard down to its main essential learning element. And we try to keep the core purpose to about 10 or 15 words or shorter. Here's an example. Given this standard, RI.5.1, which says to quote accurately from a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text, we provide you with a core purpose for this particular standard. Now, I, as an educator, I may get confused when I read this standard, specifically when it comes to the words explicitly. Maybe drawing inferences throws me off a little bit. And so the core purpose is use quotations from the text to support claims. Now, we're not here to say that there's only one correct way to write a core purpose. There are several different possible ways to come up with this, but we hope that providing you with a core purpose makes it clearer as to what our student goals are. Now, from the core purpose, we come up with a grade level goal, which you'll see right over here. And so on our content pages, you'll see on the right, we have the standard that's referenced right over here, as well as the core purpose right above it. And from this core purpose, we come up with a grade level goal, which is what you're seeing right now. Goalbook does that for you, right? And so a lot of times we spent time distilling the standard down. Goalbook does that for you and gives you a grade level goal that you can work off of. Now, from that core purpose, we come up with a grade level goal. We want those goals to be measurable and specific. And so I have an example goal on the screen right now, which says, by June 2022, Rachel will use quotations from the text to support claims. And in the chat, I would just like for you to type a Y if you think this goal is measurable for yes, or type a no, or N for no, if you think this goal is not measurable. Go ahead and do that in the chat. Y for yes and N for no. Is this goal that you're seeing right now measurable? If you say no, maybe you want to share what could be added or what other information you may include. I'm seeing some yeses, I'm seeing some nos, I'm seeing, go ahead, Caitlin.
Sorry, Zoham, I was just going to say we have some disagreement in the chat, so this might be interesting. Maybe a good time to show the next goal and see what we think.
Exactly. And so I'm going to show you one more goal, and let me read it quickly. By June 2022, Rachel will use quotations from the text to support claims with 80% accuracy in 2 out of 3 trials. And so now if I were to ask you the same question, is this measurable? Y for yes, N for no. Let's go ahead and see our responses in the chat. And again, if you're indicating a no, maybe say that what you may add or what you may amend to this goal to make it more measurable. All right. And so these are examples of goals. Now, this goal I have on the screen right now, it's better than the first one. We want to show you how Goalbook thinks about the different components of a goal and what makes a specific and measurable goal. For Rachel, we want a goal aligned to this particular standard, which we referenced before. Again, the core purpose for this standard is using quotations from the text to support claims. There are 3 components of a measurable goal, and those 3 components are what we'll spend the next few minutes going over. The first is representation, or how the information is presented to a particular student. The next is action and expression, or how the student is expressing their learning or the output. We can often think about it as, what are you holding up or using in the IEP meeting to say, yes, my student can do this goal? And then lastly is the specific criteria, which is the quantifiable part of the goal. It gives us specific elements, often in numbers, that show us how we will measure if a student did or didn't master the goal. And let's look at each of these elements a little bit closer. And so we had this as our baseline goal, which we agreed was better, right? We had some disagreement about whether it was measurable or not. But considering all of these three components, if you were to find a goal in Goalbook, it would look like this. And I'll give you a moment to read those two different goals. By June 2022, we've added in the representation piece of an independent level informational text and a claim about the passage. Rachel will identify in writing 3 quotations. That's the expression part of the goal. And then the specific criteria, 3 of 4 texts as measured by student work samples. The beauty about this goal that I'm showing you down here is it comes from Goalbook. And so Goalbook is set up to include those 3 elements of a goal in the goals that you will see. Now, once we have a goal, right, once we have a grade level goal, we want to make sure that we have flexible pathways for our students to achieve that grade level goal. And so, just like a GPS would give us multiple routes, in Goalbook, we also provide multiple routes. You'll see a grade level aligned goal right here, and then 3 additional levels of support that you can use to make sure that your students can access grade level instruction. Now, I want to go back into the tool and demo how we may design instruction for Rachel, again with her profile in mind. And so I'll go back to our homepage. We've already worked in the present levels wizard, and for this, I want to show you how we can look for instructional goals using our 2 options right over here. Both options will lead you to the same place, but I want to start with the personalized learning goal wizard first. So I'll click here. Once again, ask for some basic student information, and for Rachel's profile, I'm going to select reading, but keep in mind I could select math, behavior SEL, speech and language, transition, whichever domain I wanted to look for a goal in. For Rachel, I'm going to specifically say comprehension of informational text for a student in grade 5. And the last prompt that I am given is to indicate the student's instructional level. Now, at this point, I have a couple options. We know that Rachel's comprehension is a couple grade levels below. And so I'm going to go ahead and select 1 or 2 grade levels below. I want to name, though, that when you do that, you are given 5th grade goals that are scaffolded up so that Rachel can still access that content. And so I'll hit get resources for this student. And now I'm taken to 16 goals that I can look through for Rachel. On the left, I have a navigation bar that's filtered all of my selections in reading in 5th grade. And this level of support bar is something that I can toggle should I want to see a goal with more support. So I wanted to see a goal with more support, all I would do is move this bar to the right. And now those same 16 goals have been rewritten with additional levels of support in them. But I'll bring them back to the middle. Down below, you can also filter your goals by standard in case you want to further refine your search. You'll notice as I scroll through that there are 2 different tiles. You see a blue tile and a white tile. And we're going to go through both. But first, I just want to show you the white tile. And so I'll click into here. This is a goal for quoting textual evidence to support a claim. To the right, I see the standard and the core purpose. And based off the core purpose, I see a grade level goal. Now, we provide additional levels of support, and so you'll see a mild level of support where we've introduced some more support strategies like guiding questions. If I click on moderate level of support, we have further support strategies as choosing from a list of 5. And then lastly, for our students that need the most intense levels of support, we've reimagined the task, we've reduced the complexity, but we still keep the alignment to the grade level standard and the core purpose. Let's say for Rachel, as I look through these different levels of support, I think the moderate level of support is a good place to start. I'm going to click into the box and I'm going to begin editing this goal. So let's say we make this an annual goal, right? I can continue editing the portions that are in parentheses to make sure that I'm customizing it for Rachel. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit done. I can also copy this goal once I'm done editing into SACE, and it's as simple as copy paste once I'm done editing. And then down below, you'll see further UDL aligned strategies that you can access to help remove learning barriers. All of these strategies are based in neuroscience research that indicate that the barriers to learning are in a student's environment, whether it's around motivation, representation, or how the task is presented, or expression, which is how we ask a student to present their understanding. To the right side of the page, you'll see the standard staircase. We know that standards are vertically aligned. And so if you wanted to look at the prerequisite skills that that were needed in order to have your student perform at grade level proficiency, you could easily do that by clicking backwards, or you could click ahead and look to see what this goal looked like in future grades to make sure that you were setting up your students for success. At the top of this page, we have a progress monitoring data tracking sheet linked for you. If I click into this, I'm brought to the progress monitoring strategy page. We know that monitoring progress for students as they work towards the goals is critical, but we also know that finding the right data tracking sheet is sometimes complex. And so we've provided you with ready-to-use resources here that you can preview and see which one works for you. And then open with Google and save to your Drive or your Toolkit library with the green button. And I'll talk more about strategy pages shortly. Embedded within the goals, you'll notice certain highlights, and those highlights also point to support strategies that you can use in the classroom. If I hover over them, I get a little description, and I can also click on the highlight to be brought to that strategy's homepage. I think this goal is good for Rachel, and so I'm going to go ahead and save it to Rachel's folder in the library so we build up her portfolio. Now, we looked for instructional content with our personalized learning goal wizard. I'm going to show you another way to look for instructional content, and that's through our browse instructional content feature. Again, they both take you to the same place. It's just, in this case, you're entering in all your filters on your own. And so here, just to show you that we land at the same place, I'll go to reading for 5th grade. We had a moderate level of support for comprehension of informational text. And these are the same 16 goals that I found before. So exactly the same location. At this point, I want to show you what these blue tiles are, but let's change the subject area that we look at. So maybe I look for math. Instead of 5th grade, let's look at 8th grade. And let's look at expressions and equations. Our tiles in blue are called anchor pages, and you'll know they're anchor pages because one of their blue background, but also because of the progress monitoring emblem that you see on the bottom right. A really neat feature of our anchor pages is we offer built-in progress monitoring resources. And so if I were to click on this particular goal, I will see the standard that the goal aligns to right over here, along with the core purpose. Now you see 3 access points, and our access points are meant to provide meaningful access for all students to make progress towards the grade level goal. A grade level access point is exactly what you would expect. A grade level goal that a student can work towards and make meaningful progress towards. The approaching goal, I like to think about it as a grade level goal with a few modifications. And then lastly, the developing access point is once again where we redefine the task, we reduce the complexity for our students that need the most intense levels of support. These access points contain the latest pedagogical shifts, and we've applied an anti-racist lens to how we think about and select content for these goals. Specifically, if I were to click into an access point, I see the goal with some built-in strategies, and then some progress monitoring resources that I have available. In this case, I can preview an assessment. Here we have a student-facing assessment with an answer key. And it looks like in this document that there are 4 individual assessment opportunities that you can use to progress monitor. We also link you to a progress monitoring data sheet, which you can also open with Google. You can file and make a copy so it goes to your drive. And now the annual goal that you are working towards is also listed right here. Just keep in mind that if you make any edits to the goal in Goalbook, you'll also need to make those edits to the progress monitoring data tracking sheet. Now, while we have a whole host of instructional content, our anchor pages, which is what you're looking at right now, are only in the domains of math and reading for K through 12, behavior and SEL for K through 12, and math and reading for alternative academics. And we're working on pushing out more. I'm going to go back to our browse feature just to show you how easily I could look for some content in other domains. And so maybe I want to look for a behavior goal for students in 9th grade. I know we have a couple high school educators here. All of these goals are aligned to the CASTLE framework. And so maybe I can pick responsible decision making and identify preferred stress management techniques. And now I'm looking at an anchor page with 3 different access points. I can also look for goals in all academics, let's say. Consider 8th grade in math. And once again, all of these would be grade level aligned, and you have your anchor pages and your content pages right here. All right, so really easy way to search for content across different domains just by using our browse functionality. The last piece in designing instruction is that last question. Well, how are we going to get there? And that comes down to our strategy wizard and our browse strategy section. Again, both of these do the same thing. And so I'm just going to show you browse strategies so that you can get back into the tool a little bit quicker. Once I click on browse strategies, you'll have access to our hundreds of UDL aligned strategies. And we know that this can be overwhelming. You're not expected to download all of them or to memorize all of these strategies, but what we do hope is that you realize that this could be a reference for finding evidence-based strategies that are UDL aligned. I'll just scroll through to show you the wide breadth and depth of strategies that you have available to you. At the top, I can filter these strategies by a particular domain. And so once again, keeping Rachel's profile in mind, I'll filter by reading in the area of comprehension for grades 3 through 5. But if Rachel is in high school, I would select 9 through 12. And now I have 95 results that I can look through for support strategies for Rachel. I know I, as a teacher, used exit tickets very frequently. That was really helpful. I also relied on response cards. I'll keep scrolling. You'll see as I hover over a tile, I get a brief description of that strategy. The number that you see on the bottom right of some tiles is indicative of the downloadable resources that you have available to you. And let's say for Rachel, I click on character mapping. I think that'll be helpful for her in terms of organizing her thinking. I have a more in-depth explanation of that strategy, as well as ready-to-use resources that I can preview. I can download this as a PDF or a Word document in case I want to make any edits, and then give it to Rachel. Down below, you'll see some implementation tips. You can think about this as your instructional coach, or things that you should consider as you use this strategy in your classroom, as well as examples of ways that you can use it in different contexts. Down below, we have other UDL aligned strategies that are related to character mapping. I'll scroll to the top. Let's say I really like this strategy for Rachel. I'm going to go ahead and save it to Rachel's folder. Something else I can do to help me encourage collaboration between maybe a general educator is maybe this strategy is good for all students, not just Rachel. And so I'm going to create a folder, and maybe I title it General ELA Strategies. And I'll say use during independent time for reading. And now this strategy is also saved to my general ELA strategies folder, and I can share it with a co-teacher or a collaborator if that applies to my role. I'll go back to the home page. I'll go to Browse Strategies one more time. And let's say I'll change the domain here. So maybe I look for strategies in behavior and SEL in the area, and I can further filter by self-awareness for grades 3 through 5. And now I have 57 strategies that I could use to support me in this domain. I'll click on self-monitoring. We have some behavior checklists, some academic self-monitoring checklists here for you to look through. And again, implementation tips and examples down at the bottom. I'll go back to the home page, and at this point, we've been saving a bunch of resources for Rachel in our folder. And so I want to show you how to access that folder. If I click on your library, you'll see all the folders that I've set up. We've been saving folders or resources to Rachel's folder, and so I'll click in. And now all of her present level statement, her goals, and her strategies live right over here. I can share this folder very easily by hitting Get Shareable Link and then hit Copy Link. And I can put this into a text message or email to anyone that has an academic interest in Rachel's progress. The best part about this is they don't have to have a Goalbook Toolkit account. You can share this with a parent guardian, an admin, a co-teacher, and even some cases, Rachel herself, if that seems relevant for you. All you have to do is hit copy and input into a text message or an email. You can also share it with someone who has a Goalbook account. And if you do so, it'll look like this. You'll see copy to your library, and then all of Rachel's resources can push in to whoever you share it with that has a Goalbook account. Think about the use case of Rachel transitioning case managers or schools at the end of the year. This would be a really helpful way to facilitate that. As far as our demo is concerned, that's all I have planned for you today, but we want to give you additional work time. And so now you're going to jump back into Goalbook Toolkit and think about the student that you thought of earlier on in this session, and think about designing instruction for that student. Perhaps you look for a standard aligned goal, perhaps you look for some support strategies. And what you may do is save all of that to your library in a folder for that student. So you are building up that student's profile and set of resources in Goalbook Toolkit. All right, once again, you can use your same username and password if you've logged out, or if you haven't, continue working with the same credentials. We'll be here to answer any questions. We'll bring you back in about, let's say we'll come back at 3:05. Does that work, Caitlin?
Works for me.
Okay, 3:05. We'll come back at 3:05, right? And again, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. We're here in the chat, happy to answer anything. Also, if there's something else you want me to demo or a particular domain you want me to show you, this would be a great time to let me know through the chat, and I'm happy to do that as well. All right, have fun. As you may be engaging in some work time, I hate to interrupt that, but I just wanted to share that I personally have to step off of this training session today. You are in good hands with Caitlin. She'll be able to take you through the end. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I know it's a busy time of year. There's a lot going on, and I wish you the best of luck as you start school next week. I'm sure you're all excited to meet your students. Like I said, I'm personally going to hop off, but continue your work time. Caitlin is here to answer any questions that you may have. And we at Goalbook wish you the best of luck as school starts very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Soham.
You got it.
Hey everyone, it's Caitlin from Goalbook again. We still have 2 minutes left, so no rush. Just wanted to put in a quick reminder to, if you're comfortable and if you've gotten enough work done that you'd like to share it, go ahead and use that share folder link that Soham demoed for you a few minutes ago. And we've actually got a couple in the chat, it looks like, from Tiffany. Thanks for sharing, Tiffany. Again, the person you share this with does not have to have a Goalbook account. So this is a great way to collaborate across teams. I know someone mentioned they're a gen ed educator on the training today. Gen ed teachers who share instructional time with your students are an excellent example of someone you might want to use that share folder button with. So this is a great time to practice. Feel free to do that, and we'll wrap in about 1 minute. So thanks so much. All right, Caitlin again, I'm going to go ahead and bring us back. And quite a few of you have now chatted in some shareable links. Thank you so much. Some of them came directly to me, some of them came to everyone. So regardless of how you shared that, I really appreciate you sharing your learning. I am going to go ahead and move us into our closing session, or the closing part of our session rather. But first I'm going to go ahead and address a question that came up in the chat that I think is commonly asked, so it might be worth demoing one more time. And that is, what is the difference between the white tiles and the blue tiles? And so what I'm going to do, you can see I'm on the browse instructional content screen. I'm going to go ahead and check 5th grade just to keep us consistent with what we've been looking at for Rachel. And I'm going to go ahead and click on comprehension of informational text. When you see a blue tile here, you can see these dots, those indicate the level of support. I can change that over here on the left-hand side. That just means it will default to that access point on this page. And you see this little icon that looks like a graph, and hover over it. That will indicate to you that this page has progress monitoring assessment resources and data tracking sheets. So on these pages, that's the primary differentiator, is going to be the progress monitoring tools. Additionally, these access points each indicate an annual target. So thinking through by June of 2023, this will be our students' goal. And here are progress monitoring resources aligned to that goal that we can use over time to collect formative assessment data to speak to how that student did throughout the year. If we go back to this search result page, some of the tiles are white. We actually looked at these a minute ago as well. And again, you can see the dots that indicate the level of support. You can adjust that up here, or you can adjust that on the page itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the 5.1 standard, quote, textual evidence to support a claim. A lot of this page is very similar to an anchor page. The difference is you will not find progress monitoring assessments on this page. What you will find are some starting points that might inform either short-term objectives and goals, possibly tools you might use during RTI, response to intervention, or multi-tiered systems of support. Maybe a student who hasn't yet qualified for services, and maybe they don't necessarily need to, but we have different ways of making sure we're giving them opportunities to access the core purpose of the grade level standard. And so again, there's not a prescriptive way to use our tool, but these are different types of instructional content pages that you might consider. And some of this we try to make obvious on the tile itself. You can see, for example, the tile is blue. That indicates that it's an anchor page. It will be aligned to the most commonly assessed items, the 0.1s, the 0.2s. And again, that icon will indicate, oh yeah, this one's going to have progress monitoring tools. So I want to click into this one and get those progress monitoring assessments for my student. I also want to emphasize, I know this is kind of a short training, so as you kind of get started with accessing Toolkit on a regular basis and you explore these resources on your own, we do have a folder for you that has kind of some take homes that I'm going to go ahead and enter into the chat here. That I recommend, if you're able, feel free to either bookmark this or just open it in a tab now to explore later. But what you'll find on this page is a scavenger hunt. Once this Google screen goes away, we don't need to see that. What you'll find is a scavenger hunt. I'm going to double click here so that this will show up on our screen. That is kind of a visual walkthrough of each of the pieces of the tool that we went through together today. So you are free to take this with you. It's editable. You should be able to fill it out if you download it online, or you can print it out and use it that way. Feel free to share it with anyone who's a colleague that has a Toolkit account who isn't here at this training today. So that's one resource that might be helpful to you. There are also a couple other resources, the digital handout with the DSO present levels checklist that we went over earlier with Soham, and also a user guide that is less of a to-do list like the scavenger hunt and more just a how to log in, how to draft a present level statement. So there's some visual items there that might be helpful to you, especially as you're kind of differentiating between each of the features. And then just for fun, you can also take a look at Rachel's story again if you would like. So those are all there in the folder. And I'll also encourage everyone now, if you have the, if you're still with us, and I do apologize that the slide is taking a moment to change, but let's go ahead and take this time to chat in anything that connected with you, anything in this session that connects to something you're already doing in your practice that you already know is expected of you. Any new ideas or impressions that maybe extended your thinking about those concepts, and anything that you think might be challenging for you this year. And we can even think bigger. It doesn't necessarily have to be Goalbook specific. And thanks, Tiffany, for chatting in the UDL element. This is actually maybe a good time for me to plug our webinars. So again, on our home screen, if you click here where it says upcoming webinars, that link will be there all the time. And this actually links to a website that has the full scope and sequence of all of the professional learning webinars that we're going to offer all year. So at the beginning of the year, we're really heavy into just giving overviews of Toolkit. There will be one later this month, for actually this week, for students who are pre-K or early childhood, how to use for RSPs, progress monitoring. We have one coming up for secondary specifically in September. For students, those of you who work with students with more moderate to severe disabilities who possibly take the alternative assessment, coming up in September, we have a webinar for that. And then we'll just keep going here: social emotional learning, Toolkit standard staircase, trauma-informed practice. There's also one in here somewhere that's specific to UDL on its own, if you want some deeper learnings about that. So if anything on this page resonates with you, just click the register button. Even if you don't end up attending live, something comes up or it's during your prep or something like that. If you register for it, we will email you a recording of that webinar. So you can still get that professional learning in. So I just wanted to plug that for you really quickly. And then I'm also going to give you the chance to go ahead and give me and Soham some feedback. I promise this is a really short survey. You can even fill it out on your phone if you just want to snap that QR code with your phone really quickly. It basically just asks, what was most helpful for you in this training? And if you have any further questions that you might want additional training on this year. And Soham and I get to connect with Jenny and kind of talk through what makes the most sense for you. We want this to be useful. And so any feedback you can give us to how we can best support you as you use Toolkit, I do thank you in advance for that feedback. We do read it, and I look forward to hearing what you all have to say. And then if you don't want to do the QR code, I just went ahead and dropped that link in the chat. And that's actually all I have for today. Thanks for all of your feedback in the chat. It looks like this was useful, that there was some learning that you'll take with you today, and I'm really glad to hear that. And like Soham said, we definitely want to wish you a happy beginning of your school year. I know this time is really exciting, but it can also be kind of stressful. So I hope that some of what you learned today will take maybe one thing off your plate, to see that we have some tools that help those things that you have to do anyway, make them a little bit easier and make it a little more conducive to planning for the needs of all students. I'm going to go ahead and put this other slide up that I was asked to put up by the district, and I'll pass it back over to you, Jenny, in case there were any internal announcements that you needed to make.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. So for those of you, I've been getting a chat about the license. If you had a license last year, you should continue to get access to that license. But please do email me or your SPED supervisor if you have changed school so we can update our tracker. If you are new to special education this year and you would like to get an access to the license, please email me, Jimenez Payne J at sfusd.edu, or your SPED supervisor, so that we can get you access to the license. And I believe also Caitlin will be giving me a list of all the participants in this Zoom, correct, Caitlin?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
I'll share
correct.
that with you. All right, well, with that, I noticed quite a few folks have dropped off already. If you have what you need, you have the links to both of those surveys and the link to the materials folder. Feel free to go ahead and hop off and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And I'm sure that we will see you again this year. Thank you so much for your time. You guys have been great.